What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I just got out of seeing Longlegs, one of my most hotly anticipated movies of the year, and I have to admit that I was kind of horrified and bewildered and mystified, oftentimes amused and cackling at some really dark stuff. Occasionally, a little, basically, it's a little sleep-inducing. I could feel my eyelids getting heavy throughout. I mean, I was feeling a wide array of emotions, but I feel like now's the best time to offer my initial thoughts because I'm not hedging my bets. Like one of the things I can't stand in film criticism or film commentary is when people are kind of like guarded and their answers, and I feel like whether you make a complete idiot of yourself or not, at least just be honest in your feedback because there's a lot about this movie to love. I can't wait to see it again, but I'll totally understand if people walk out of it and say, what the fuck, that was totally overhyped, I thought it was boring as shit. It's going to invite a wide array of responses, and I'd already been seeing a wide array of responses, a wide array of responses prior to going myself because I'd been hearing from different corners from some people whose taste I trust and respect. But I've been hearing that it was a dark comedy. I've been hearing that it was underwhelming. I've been hearing that it was a masterpiece. And I was like, God damn, all right. So if people that I like, people who I respect are saying all these different things, I have no idea what to expect. It reminds me a little bit of the phenomenon surrounding Hereditary, where everybody was saying, oh, it's the next great horror masterpiece, blah, blah, blah. And I agreed once I finally saw it. But I remember my little brother, who was like, 13 or 14 at the time, they had a slumber party to watch that. And they're all like, what the fuck is this shit? And so I totally invite and welcome any and all extreme reactions to weird goddamn horror movies like Longlegs. But one of the ways I like to measure the success of a horror movie is the degree to which it kind of shakes you up or sticks with you and kind of leaves you in a state of anxiety after the movie's over. And I just had a really weird experience. When I was walking home, I was coming from the AMC Village 7, and I was hooking around up Broadway, and I was distracted by some people. I can't remember what they were talking about, but I suddenly turned around, and there was this very odd-looking person walking toward me. It looked like a little girl dressed like a doll, because she was all in pink, and she had a pink face mask or medical mask on. I was like, that's unusual. And then as I got closer, I realized she was an extremely old lady, and there was something about the contrast with all that pink and all that just like garish outfit with the ancient face. I was like, ah! And I immediately crossed the street. Anyway, in New York, it's a perpetual kind of carnival ride. You're always seeing weird things. But there was something about the emotions that have been stirred up by Longlegs. And then seeing her, I realized, okay, so the movie did get its hooks into me. What it reminded me of, many years ago, back in the 90s, my older brother hadn't seen Rosemary's Baby. I lent him the VHS cassette, and I left. And I remember when I left the room, he was just watching it like on the couch like a normal person. I went off and screwed around with one of my friends for a while. And when I came back to the room at the end of the screening, he was like 3 inches from the screen just going, like his jaw was hanging out. He was completely, utterly mesmerized and petrified all at once. And then throughout the rest of the night, my friend and I kept like coming in and out of my bedroom for some reason. I think we were like looking for weed or something. But every time we would open the door, my brother would leap out of this bed and go, oh my God, y'all are freaking me out. You got us. I mean, anyway, he was in a heightened state of anxiety. So while I wasn't quite having the same extreme reaction to Longlegs as my brother did to Rosemary's Baby, it definitely got to me, and I'm not afraid to acknowledge that. And initially, I want to discuss the movie with no spoilers because this is a mystery. I mean, at its core, just a good old-fashioned FBI movie looking for a serial killer with all sorts of strange ins and outs to the case. And I don't want to ruin that for anybody. But there's one line in this movie that's so fucked up and so funny and so disturbing and just so gruesome that I'm gonna have to give the line a high five at the end of the review, or I won't be able to live with myself. Because as soon as I heard it, I mean, I might have been the only person in the theater, but I started cackling like a hyena, and maybe that was spoiling the tension for the rest of the people. But there's definitely some really dark humor at the core of this. And Nicolas Cage, bless his heart, he's been doing this kind of stuff for decades. He just leans into the most warped humor humanly possible, and you can tell he was just having a fucking blast with this movie. He just totally goes for it. I mean, if you are a fan of movies like like Bad Lieutenant Port-a-Call, where he's kind of on edge, or Wild at Heart, where he's definitely on edge at times, or Raising Arizona, or they're like Throw a Rock, or Mandy. There's a million movies where Nicolas Cage has kind of an extreme persona in a lot of ways. Well, then this is going to be the movie for you, because I feel like Nicolas Cage at this point, he's got 40 years of good work under his belt with people like Francis Ford Coppola and the Coen brothers. The list just goes on. And I know some people love to like make fun of him as a way of admiring him. I'm like, fuck all that bullshit. He's got so many good movies to his name. I feel like you can just focus on the positive and give him the respect and admiration that he deserves. But here's all you need to know, ripped straight from the pages of Wikipedia. Longlegs is a 2024 American horror thriller film written and directed by Osgood Perkins. That person's reputation's about to skyrocket. The film stars Maika Monroe, Nicolas Cage, Alicia Witt, Blair Underwood, and Kiernan Shipka. It's being released by Neon this weekend, and the premise: in the 1990s, new FBI agent Lee Harker was assigned to an unsolved case involving a satanic serial killer known as Longlegs. As the investigation becomes more complicated with occult evidence uncovered, Harker realizes a person linked to the killer and must act quickly to prevent another family murder. And I feel like with any thriller or horror movie or mystery involving satanic worship or the occult or anything along those lines, you can definitely veer into really silly territory. Like, it's a weird thing. When I was a kid and I was still going to church every Sunday, movies that had religious themes like The Omen or Rosemary's Baby or The Exorcist, I think they had additional power just because at that time, you know, as a good little Episcopalian boy, blah, blah, blah. But as I've gotten older and I've kind of replaced religion with, you know, filmmakers and authors, I give more of my attention to religious-themed horror affects me in a different way. However, if the characters in the story genuinely, sincerely, truly believe, and we're seeing some evidence that at least implies some of what they believe in might actually be true, then it still has the power to absolutely get its hooks into me. And I feel like whether you're a non-believer or just all in with your diehard Christian beliefs, I think there's room for everybody to enjoy Longlegs from whatever their point of view might be. And so, yeah, Osgood Perkins, I think, yeah, first and foremost, he wrote a really interesting screenplay because the heroine of the movie, I won't say she's supernatural or psychic or anything like that, but she has very strong, I guess, inclinations or impulses, or she just gets these hunches, and some of them are true and some of them are not, and you can read into those hunches as little or as much as you like, which I think is makes it interesting. But I like the idea that you have perhaps something devilish being investigated by somebody who's got slightly enhanced abilities. It just makes the whole thing just have a little something extra to set it apart from other thrillers. And I don't know where she's been all these years, but Maika Monroe, she just went all out with this. I guess she first came to my attention, like a lot of people, with the film It Follows, and I haven't rewatched It Follows in 10 years. And I probably need to revisit it because I know there's a sequel on the way, but she was fantastic in that. And then I saw her in The Guest, which came out that same year. I thought she was fantastic in that. And then I saw her in Independence Day Resurgence, which was, nobody was good in that. That movie fucking sucked balls. And then I don't think I've seen her in anything since then. And I don't know if she took time off or if she or if she struggled with her career at all or anything like that, or if I just didn't happen to be watching the movies in which she's appearing. I'm looking at her IMDb right now, and she definitely stayed busy. But there's an eerie, sensitive, but like rock hard intensity to the way she plays her character here, where you can tell she's delicate and has some very strange experiences from her childhood that are affecting her as an adult. But at the same time, she's a balls to the wall FBI agent trying to track down a serial killer. And so I feel like it's an interesting mix of sensitivity and like ruthlessness. Maybe ruthless is the wrong word, but I guess she's single-minded and determined to figure out who is killing all these families. And for people who like puzzles and codes and riddles, they're going to be delighted by the murder mystery at the core of this, because much like Zodiac, with the fantastic David Fincher movie, I guess that's almost 20 years old at this point, but the killer likes to leave behind notes with codes and that sort of thing, and she's really good at deciphering this stuff. And so I feel like if you're into that kind of how can I describe it? If you're into almost like the killer and the investigator matching wits and playing that game of cat and mouse with each other, you're going to be delighted by Longlegs. Or if you just want to see Nicolas Cage just scare the shit out of you and or make you laugh like hell, well, then you're going to have a good time. But I do need to acknowledge, for like the first hour of the movie, I was like doing that thing where you have like one eye open, the other eye open, and I was like, at times doing this. I even left at one point and splashed water in my face. It's like, I'm interested and I'm like fascinated by the style and the atmosphere. I was like, God damn, I'm falling asleep. Like, what do I do? And then during my favorite scene of the movie, I don't know if I fell asleep for a couple seconds or for a couple minutes. I woke up with some truly horrific violence on display, and from that point on, I'd like recovered. All I needed was like that 15-second catnap, and I was back at it, and then I was totally invested for the rest of the movie. But I'm definitely gonna have to watch this movie again because I don't know how long I was out for. But I must concede, anybody who thinks this movie is boring as shit, I feel your pain, because even if I was into it, I also was at times struggling to stay on its wavelength. So what else can I say without giving away any spoilers? I'll say this. The social media campaign for this movie was nothing short of brilliant, or at least it was on Twitter, aka X. That's the only social media platform where I have a regular presence. But for months, I've been seeing all these gorgeous posters slowly being teased out, and all these interesting letters and codes and that sort of thing, where I really had no idea what to expect. I was like, what the fuck is this? And I watched the trailer, and I was left equally bewildered and mystified. But my theater was packed. So whatever they were doing with their social media campaign on the various platforms, it worked. Like, it reached the perfect target audience, because everybody showed up. They put their phones away, and this one guy sat down next to me who must have had enough weed in his backpack to keep all of New York high for like a year. It was just like, coming, like, it wasn't the smell of like somebody having smoked weed. It was like weed in baggies. But anyway, he was all in on the movie as well. I could tell the crowd was fired up and ready to go, but when it ended, I could hear people saying, like, what? Like turning to the people beside them, like, someone is going to need to help me, like, understand what we just watched. So don't be surprised if you see a ton of conflicting reactions from a lot of different people, and I think all their emotions and all their reactions are probably equally justified. And this is probably going to end up being the most hotly debated and hotly discussed horror film for the rest of the year. I'm dying to see it again. I mean, we still have Cuckoo right around the corner, which admittedly looks pretty goddamn cool. We've got Alien Romulus, but I don't know if that's going to be pure horror or sci-fi or whatever. But I'm excited for those. So we're not completely through with the horror genre, but having seen In a Violent Nature, a movie where I liked some of the scenes, but I thought just like the last third of that movie just rolled over and died, and having seen Maxine, which I felt like tapped the brakes and was a little cautious for my taste. And of course, we still have Nosferatu from director Robert Eggers coming our way this December. But so far, Longlegs has been my favorite of all the horror films that I've seen this year. It's funny, like, going into the summer, I was like, this is going to be the summer of just kick-ass, like, new horror movies and horror franchises and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like everybody's always complaining about the lack of new franchises or the lack of new intellectual property in the studio system. However, the one big exception is scary movies. I mean, if you want to see new stories, new screenplays, as opposed to just prequels and sequels and remakes and reboots into infinity, every year there's some really cool new filmmakers and some really cool new stories in the horror genre that, and oftentimes many of them turn into franchises. Like Smile 2 is coming in October. They showed the trailer for that right before this movie started. I was hoping initially, I was like, is this the trailer for It Follows 2? But anyway, it was the trailer for Smile 2. So we do have new franchises coming into being in the horror genre. It's just not a genre that everybody's going to be totally on board with. And it gives actors so much freedom to indulge in some really insane, deranged behavior. And so I do have to give a shout out to some of the members of the cast. We've got Blair Underwood as Agent Carter, and he's fucking incredible. Like, for a movie that's as like weird and surreal and dreamlike as this movie often is, he's very grounded and kind of like, he's one of those kind of by the book, like tough guy FBI agents who is responsible for the funniest line of the movie toward the end, which I will not spoil at this time. We've got Michelle Choi Lee, who's good. Alicia Witt is in here, and I've been watching her in movies since I saw her as Saint Alia of the Knife in Dune back in 1984 when she says, "How can this be?" And anyway, I guess at this point I've been watching her movies for 40 years. I didn't even recognize her at first, and then when I saw her name in the credits, I was like, no way, that's the original Alia. Anyway, one of my only complaints about Dune Part 2 was the fact that they didn't do Alia properly. Like, Alia should be a little girl with all the memories and experiences of all these other Reverend Mothers. But I'm not going to get sidetracked here. Long before Anya Taylor-Joy played Alia of the Knife, Alicia Witt was there first. But if you're fond of actresses going to a very strange place, much like Piper Laurie and Carrie as the very intense, religiously devout mother, well, then you will love Alicia Witt's performance big time. But it's Maika Monroe who totally holds this movie together. In the absence of her great performance, what you would be left with is a lot of kind of dead space in between the scenes where Nicolas Cage is just going for it. I mean, some people will rightly accuse him of being a teeny tiny bit over the top, but he's so vulnerable and unhinged and extreme and going to such raw, like dangerous terrain so frequently throughout this, and he's so unpredictable that I think a lot of people are just like, even if you're like 13 and watching this, like you've never seen any of his movies before, be like, who is that guy? I want to watch all of his movies. But in the end, if you don't have a good filmmaker bringing all these ingredients together, none of it would work. So Oz Perkins, I don't think I've seen a single movie about Oz Perkins, but I will be watching Oz Perkins movies from now on. Hang on, looking him up. Director. He did a little bit of The Twilight Zone in 2020, which I bailed on. Oh, he did Greta and Hansel, which I did see, so I have seen one of his movies. He did I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which I have not seen, and he did The Black Goat's Daughter. So Gretel and Hansel, barely remember that. I saw that during COVID here in New York. I think that Longlegs is dramatically superior to Gretel and Hansel, and I think whether you're talking about Neon or A24, Oz Perkins is going to stay busy for the next couple of years because he knows how to do that kind of house style that both Neon and A24 love, where it's inexpensive but beautifully lit, beautifully shot, very mysterious, but has a little hint of class, a little hint of art house, where it makes it seem respectable. Because a lot of critics can't acknowledge that they love horror movies. For me, I do not care. Like, I've been watching sleazy horror movies and respectable horror movies my whole life, and that will never change. I like horror fiction. I like anything and everything that is within that genre. I'm game. And so I don't need to have the air of respectability in order to get on its wavelength. But there are a lot of critics who do. And if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, hang on, let's see. Rotten Tomatoes, I'm betting this is in the high 90s or 100. Sorry, real time. This is what happens when I don't write my reviews in advance. You get to watch me kind of bullshitting in between. Longlegs, 92%. Okay, I think that's fair. And the audience score is 67%. I also think that's fair, and it's not surprising at all. There are going to be a lot of one-star reviews of this movie. Like, everybody has been lying to us. And, once again, people do get resentful if they feel like they've been kind of hoodwinked by the hype machine. I can remember being in the theater for the Blair Witch Project, summer 1999. And I was into it, and I was on its wavelength. But when it ended, this guy behind me just goes, "Oh man, like cha-ching, like there you go. They took my money." You could tell he was just frustrated, where he felt like there was no there, where he felt like he had been kind of sucked in, but he just ultimately was kind of exasperated by the end. Whereas I went home and I was kind of on edge for a while after seeing it. But I think I've reached the end of my ability to offer any commentary without offering some spoilers. So I'll just say it's an hour and 41 minutes long. Whether you like elevated horror or trashy horror, you will get generous quantities of both. Can't promise you'll like it. Can't promise that you'll love it. But I think at a minimum, you'll have fun discussing it. But don't go out to dinner and have a big meal and a bunch of glasses of wine and then go, "Oh, let's go to Longlegs," and stretch out one of those big giant chairs in the theater. You will sleep the entire movie. Like, drink a shot of espresso, go see the movie, and then go out to dinner with your friends and discuss it. I think that's the plan of attack that I would recommend. Then you'll have a much better time. But it's time for me to at least to discuss one spoiler. So people always get mad at me for not offering enough of a warning. Like if they say, "I was across the room and I couldn't get to my phone." Spoiler warning, 1, 2, 3, press pause, and there's a time code below. But I'm assuming at this point you do want to hear what is the funniest joke in the history of the horror genre featured in Longlegs. So at the root of the story, the way all these different families keep getting killed is the devil working through certain tools and intermediaries is forcing people to kill themselves. More often than not, it's like a father with an axe or a father with a kitchen knife. But what's perplexing everybody is that you have all these massacred families and no evidence of anybody being in there, and apart from sometimes like the leftovers of a doll and things like that. And as it turns out, the character played by Nicolas Cage is constructing these beautiful dolls, which he then will give to a child, which kind of invites the devil into their home. And you have these brilliant cutaways to where if you kind of look out of the corner of your eye, it's just like this cloak of shadow with these eyes looking there. It's just gorgeous stuff. I loved it. But when people eventually kind of fall under its spell, murder and mayhem ensue. And at the end of the movie, Maika Monroe is trying to prevent her boss, the character played by Blair Underwood, Agent Carter, from butchering his family. And you can tell everybody's a little on edge, and the daughter's loving the doll, and the wife's on edge, and everybody's just acting really deranged and insane. And at one point, because it's the birthday party, Agent Carter and his wife get up to go to the kitchen to go cut the birthday cake. And the wife says, "Oh, don't worry, we'll be right back." And he goes, "I'll be right back. You're staying in the kitchen." And the way he said it, I was like, that is so fucked up. That is so hardcore. But it was also at the same time, it was played for laughs. It was deliberately played for laughs. And I just fucking lost my mind. And I feel like if you want to leave people with a really strong, positive, lingering impression, give them something to talk about afterwards. And I'll be talking about that line for the rest of the year. And before I wrap up, I have to give a little shout out to Alicia Witt and Nicolas Cage. They make a hell of a team. Both Ruth Harker, who's kind of the devil's agent on this planet. Basically, she's acting on his whims in order to keep her daughter safe from Longlegs ever doing anything horrible to her. And there's some really cool scenes where the way it's framed, how you only see Nicolas Cage from the chin down and the way he's speaking. Something about like hearing that crazy voice without seeing the Nicolas Cage eyes just makes them all the more disturbing. But whether Ruth Harker's blowing people away with her shotgun or planting dolls in their homes or just doing whatever, but both Longlegs and Ruth Harker are fantastic horror villains. So I think the people that like this movie are going to be like, this movie fucking rules. It's totally my jam. And there are going to be a lot of people who think like we're lying or like we're talking ourselves into liking it and that sort of thing. And it's going to be up to everybody to decide for themselves. I will not tell anybody what to think. If everybody hates it, cool. That won't affect me one bit. And if everybody adores it and thinks I'm being too harsh, that won't affect me one bit. Everybody should hunt it down, form their own opinion, have their own discussions, because I cannot stand consensus amongst movie freaks. I feel like movie freaks should angrily debate the things that they love and hate, and that's the way I've always done it, and that's the way I always will. In any case, I'm going to wrap up this video. I have no idea what to expect down in the comments below. People might be like, you're an idiot, unsubscribing, or, oh my God, we see eyeball to eyeball. Like, it's one of those things where I cannot wait to see what people have to say about my reactions to Longlegs. It's going to be a very interesting weekend. I'm actually traveling to Texas tomorrow to go to the Comedy Mothership in Austin for the first time, so I'll be kind of checking in on the comments periodically just to hear what people have to say. But I hope everybody has an amazing weekend. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. But I look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts on the flick, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.